then we can start. Peter, if you change the slide to the agenda so we can show what's planned for today. So yeah, just quickly before going to the actual content, we will introduce you to the agenda of the training session. So the first part covers like very briefly our company, so KPMG's GST introduction. We will not spend many minutes on that, but just quickly give you a brief overview where we are coming from, and then also present you the overview of our recruiting process. So because that's very important connection to the training session agenda that we have today. Then after this brief introduction, we will go to the actual like aim of this session. So case interview, practice, and theory. So that starts with first briefly we will give you like this kind of like a baseline understanding on what is case interview, why case interviews are used, and what are the best practices when it comes to case interview, like case solving during the case interviews. And then after that, we will have a practice case that is planned to do together with you, so that every one of you can prepare an own answer to the case questions, and then we will together go through example answers step by step, so that everyone gets an idea what's actually a case interview and what kind of issues there could be, and how to approach those issues. So that's pretty much the aim for this training session. Peter, do you have anything to add? Or
no, I think we'll keep it quite informal, and we'll let you know if we've missed something along the way. And just to iterate the point there at the bottom, do ask questions by raising your hand, and then we'll indicate towards you that you can open up the mic. Otherwise, we ask that you keep the mics closed to limit the amount of background noise on the line. So we'll kind of go through each slide, especially in the case interview theory part, and at the end of each slide, give an opportunity to ask questions. There is quite a lot of material to run through in 2 hours, so we will need to kind of keep the train moving, but we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions during the thing already, and that also applies to the case interview practice part. But then there's also an opportunity at the end to ask general questions if you haven't had a chance to do so during the events.
Yes, exactly. So please raise your hand and ask questions if you feel so. We will be happy to answer all the questions throughout the presentation. But okay, maybe then, well, before we start, do you have any questions right now that you want to comment or ask? No, crystal clear. So maybe we can then better start with I guess we have the Paul first.
Let's start with the intros if you want to go first, and then I'll go.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have them to make this interactive. We're going to be using Mentimeter. Hopefully you're familiar with the software from school. So hopefully you have a laptop or a phone nearby where you can go and submit your answers. But it's very easy, and we'll walk through that as we go along. But please go ahead, Mikko.
Yeah, good point. Forgot to all the introductions. Yeah, so my name is Mikko Malinen, and I'm working as a project manager at KPMG's GST. So our strategy consulting unit. Now I've spent this my 4th year at KPMG, and I'm Aalto alumni, studied finance, graduated a couple of years ago, but I had already started working at KPMG during the studies. So just finalized my master thesis a couple of years ago, but already had moved to the actual working life before that. During the studies, I had a couple internships more related to M&A. So I had this kind of like a M&A advisory internship position, and then I worked in an industrial company's in-house M&A team for a while. But KPMG was my first real full-time permanent position. That's briefly about my background.
Great, thank you. My name is Peter Huttunen, originally from Finland, but have spent a lot of time abroad. Well, I did my bachelor's in the UK, master's in the Netherlands, exchange in France. Then worked as a product manager in a tech startup for a few years before coming to KPMG. Been here now in the same team as Mikko, so the strategy team for 2.5 years, working on a variety of different engagement types and in different industries as well. So we can talk more about that later if anybody has any questions. And we're also going to introduce the kind of organizational structure that we have in case, or as that is likely to be quite unclear for many. But the idea of the session is indeed case interviews, but we're going to be talking about it from the strategy team perspective mainly. Hopefully that's come across clearly already in the pre-event communications. But yeah, that's shortly about me. I think next we can go to the online poll. So we want to get an idea, since we don't want it to be just us talking to you. We want to get an idea of who's attending the event as well. So let me just quickly open up the poll so you can all make some answers there. Oh. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So if you go to www.minty.com and add the code there to the field that is asked for and submit your level of study, then we can get an idea of who we're talking to and potentially align our communications according to that. The poll should be live, and there we go. Seems to be working. That's great. I think we have about 32 participants, so we'll wait till we get a few more in. Very happy to see first and second year students. You guys are getting ahead of the game, so you have lots of time to get more familiarized and practice cases. So you're definitely in a good position to then later on be applying for or even now for the different internship opportunities within consulting or more widely. But a nice bell-shaped curve there. So that's great to see. Okay, I think we've got 29 responses, so that's good enough for now. We're going to move on to the next question. Let me just see how I do that. Not so clear after all. If I now start it. Okay, perfect. So some of you are already answering to this one as well. And welcome to the new joiners as well. Just getting an idea of who's attending today.
For new joiners, just to let you know that we are recording the session. So if you are wondering why that was accurate in the beginning, and the recording will be I don't know, posted to some career service website portal after the session.
And that's available in the chat, so you can see where it's going. But mainly business students, so that's good to know as well. Excellent, thank you for that. And then we're going to jump back into the presentation. So please go ahead, Mikko.
Yeah. So as promised, we will keep this very short. Just a couple words about who we are, where we are coming from. So GSG is a part of KPMG's advisory business unit, and we work in close cooperation with other deal advisory teams, so corporate finance and transaction service. But we are own like individual team within deal advisory practice, and we, as said, we focus on strategy consulting, and but we do have a lot of joint projects and joint cooperation with deal advisory teams and also other KPMG's advisory teams, so IT consulting, digital experts, and so on. But maybe we don't need to spend time on this. So if you have any questions about GSG or KPMG in general, we are happy to answer those. But maybe just move on to the what we do, and we just quickly give you an idea what kind of problems we are working with.
Yes, just before we do that, yeah, just one more clarification. So indeed, we sit in advisory, and the other two big areas is the audit business and then the tax business, tax and legal. So just to give a general idea of how KPMG and also typically the other big four operate. So there's these kind of three big lines, and then we sit within advisory. So just a clarification.
Yeah, KPMG is probably most well known about the audit business, but actually advisory business is pretty big, and we do a lot of I don't know the numbers, but probably a third of the revenue or even more comes from other than audit businesses. So
it's about
actually 60% is probably non-audit related business.
Yeah, it's about a third advisory, third audit, and third tax and legal, if I remember correctly, roughly speaking.
Yeah. And GSG is like we are, well, as the name says, we are global, so we operate across the globe. In total, we have like something like 2,400 professionals, and in Finland we are a team of about 25 persons, and we do a lot of cooperation with the global teams, but our like team in Finland is still an own entity within the global network, and we serve a variety of sectors. No need to go in detail those. Again, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer, but let's keep this short. Just maybe the next slide would be interesting to just couple of words about what kind of problems we are working with. So basically we have 4 different types of so-called value propositions. First one is growth. So we help our clients to improve their top line performance. We help them with defining growth strategies, market entry strategies, different kind of market studies, and so on. Then the second bucket is operating strategy and cost. So we help our clients with all kinds of operative and cost cutting related topics. Then the third one, we do a lot of deals related projects. So different kind of due diligences, so commercial due diligences, operative due diligences, and so on. We do M&A synergy related projects, and then different types of carve out and integration studies. Then the fourth bucket is the bigger enterprise-wide transformations. We could do or group strategy projects for a major client to help them to update their strategies, and we can help them with running through different transformation projects and programs and so on. So just briefly to give you an idea that who we are, what we do, and again, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and we're happy to answer. But probably better if you don't have anything to add, maybe we can go to the actual topic.
Yeah, maybe just one comment that there's a lot of different bullet points here. Just to kind of summarize what we most commonly do is, so we can do a growth strategy for a customer, or on the operational side, indeed, looking at different operational improvement projects. And then on the deals, we do a lot of commercial due diligence. So let's say a company wants to buy another one. Before they do, if it's in a different sector or a different market, we'll look at that market and the competitors to identify whether it's a good idea or not. So just a very simple or very general simplification of what we do. But yeah, let's move on. That was actually our introduction very quickly. Before we go into the recruiting process, does anybody have any questions indeed on that part? If not, we will move on. If you'd like to continue.
So case interviews are very important part of our recruiting process. So typically in our team GST, we have like this kind of a recruiting process which covers 2 to 3 rounds of interviews. And as you can see, case interviews basically occur in every round. So whether you are applying to intern or associate, so the entry-level full-time position, you will get multiple case interviews throughout the during the interview process. So typically you would get like 4 to 5 cases during the interview process, and that's why it's very important to actually practice and prepare for the interview, so that you can actually get the best out of the performance and actually excel in the interview. So, but that's briefly. That just emphasizes how important this is, and I guess that our competitors also have pretty much similar structure, and the cases are well emphasized in the process. Their processes as well. Do you have anything to add, Peter?
No, just to kind of iterate the point that both for intern and associate positions, the process is very similar. The performance level that we will then assess is not as stringent at the intern level, but it's the same process, just a different aptitude level. And then also for the associate level, the third round, the final interview stage may or may not be held. So that's more case dependent.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any questions about the interview process and or yeah?
Yes, I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the online aptitude test is like in the last in this process? So in the last part, usually it's in the front. After you send your CV and application letter, you get the link to these tests usually.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, that's I don't know. I don't actually have any very good answer on that.
I can answer because of the question. It's we can clarify that it's an online aptitude test, but it's also a kind of personality fit test. So there we're kind of looking more at the personality fit towards KPMG values. That's why it's not in the beginning, but it's kind of a final check and test.
Yeah, could be also in the beginning, but now we have just selected that it's in the end. It's kind of like a final sanity check type of role. Good, but a good question.
Good question. Yeah, good question, Ali. Any other questions?
All right, no. Then let's move
Great.
on.
So again, before we start the actual case interview theory section, we'd like to gather some of your thoughts again. So we're going to head over to Mentimeter again, and then we just open that up again. So it should be visible now. So the idea that we want to get across from here is, before we go into our thoughts about case interviews, we want to see how much you know about them, or what your thoughts are related to them, and what your experiences are in relation to them. So we have just 2 questions here again. But it's looking promising. Hopefully we'll be able to kickstart your case interview journeys with some fundamentals and some basic ideas that you can then take home and explore more. For the new joiners, what we're doing is everybody's going to www.menti.com and adding the code that you can see at the top of the screen, and then you're able to vote in this online poll and give your answer. But I think we've gotten a pretty clear indication here, so we can move on to the next one. So second question is a bit more generally related to why do we do them, and what do you think we look for within or through these case interviews? What's the kind of purpose that we use them for, and what do we look for in candidates? Getting a good spread here. Ability to solve tough problems seems to be the most answered consistently. That's definitely one of them.
There are no wrong answers. I think all the abilities are very important, and we are looking to get very good overall performance.
Exactly. This was a bit of we were a bit cheeky. It was a bit misleading, since we were asking for what we look for in most in candidates, but we actually look for all of these different things. We don't have a particular weighting, so it's not 10% the first one, 20% the second one. We look for all these things, and especially the first one, ability to solve tough problems. That's definitely a core consultant skill. But it's interesting that drive gets the least. So I'd like to comment that that's definitely one key component that we also look for, and something that you definitely need in consulting. You're typically faced with challenging situations, ambiguity of information, can be difficult clients, and generally can be a difficult process, and can be a lot of time pressure and pressure to deliver the work. So drive to kind of keep your work, your stream, or your project going, keep the train moving, so to say, and meet the deadlines. That's really important in the work, and definitely one thing that is very critical. Maybe the second point, the second lowest, comfort with numbers. That's also a very key component of what we do. So when we're working with clients, they know their business very well, and we need to get a very quick grasp of their business. So you need to comprehend the scales of the business that we're talking about. So whether revenues are in millions or in thousands or in billions, you need to have comfort with numbers and be able to get at the kind of proportions that we're talking about. So that's definitely also a very key quality that we look for. Any comments, Mikko, before we move on? Thank you again.
No, nothing to add.
Looks great so far.
Yep.
Let me just switch over to the presentation.
Do you have any questions now? Be good to ask no. No. All right, let's continue then.
So looking at the case interview kind of generally, we'll start off with what are the different types of case interviews that you may come across. This is not completely comprehensive. Different companies might have different ways of doing it, but this is typical for us and for KPMG. So the first one, especially which is what we use a lot of time, is the live case interview. And it's, as it says, used both for trainee and associate levels. And what this means is either over Teams or face-to-face at the office, we will have a face-to-face meeting where you're given a client problem and then you work through it with the interviewer. And so typically the structure goes as follows. There's the introduction, the problem introduction, and then typically the interviewer will try to verify the scope of what the client is trying to look for, ask some clarifying questions. For example, if the client has any specific objectives they're trying to achieve. Then there's a structuring part, and this is really critical. So in order to have the scope of the project that is manageable to do, to avoid, as we say, boiling the ocean, we want to structure the problem in a very specific way in order to make it solvable within the case interview or later within the project itself. Then typically there's an analysis stage, which typically involves some quantitative analysis, so some calculations. And there's typically a brainstorming part where you're asked for a kind of qualitative ideation related to the business problem. And then finally, there's a conclusion and the recommendation that the interviewee would give to the client. And that's also what we're going to be focusing on today. The other case types are homework cases. This is typically, as you may remember from the second part of the associate level. So the associates will first do 2 live case interviews, and then before coming in for the second round, they're given a case to prepare at home, and then you come and present it to our office, simulating how we present them to our clients. And then the third one, which is more commonly used within the corporate finance team, is that you'll have an interview, and then you're given a case after that interview to solve, and then you send that case back to the interviewer. But if there's no questions related to this is quite straightforward, and you can come back to this later on as well. So just moving on, if you'd like to continue, Mikko.
Yeah. So typically, as Peter said, so we focus on live case interview today, and what's live case interview typical structure? So basically, typically it takes like 1 hour, and it covers three like phases or parts. The first one, so-called like personal background or fit part, focuses on understanding better the candidate's professional background, studies, hobbies, and so on, and the personality, and it helps us to assess whether the person is something that we want to work with and see that it fits to the team and has the basic background baseline, like understanding that we are looking for. That typically takes like 15 minutes. Then the second and the most important part of the case interview is the case itself, and that takes something like 40 minutes of the 1 hour interview. So that emphasizes the importance of the case interviews, the case practice. So it takes majority of the time, and then the final 5 minutes typically are used for Q&A sessions. So let the candidate give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions, and then also probably review give very like brief feedback on the case performance and let know the next steps of the process. So that's typically the structure of a live case interview. Before moving on, do you have any questions that you would like to ask about the like overall structure or this kind of like a general level like teams?
We're moving quite quickly, but we definitely do have time for questions. So indeed, on this slide or the previous one, any questions before we move on to the other sections of what a case interview entails?
No, crystal clear. All right, maybe then.
Perfect.
Let's continue.
Then we on. So within case interview theory part, let's have a think about why do we use case interviews before moving on to the typical problem types that you will encounter and before going through some best practices. So why do we use case interviews? We can think about this as the rationale for us as the employer, but then also there are some benefits for you as a candidate. And then we'll also think about some key qualities that are being assessed. So first of all, for us, it's the best way to evaluate which candidates might be successful within the work. So it's the best type of interview that is used in the industry to try to simulate the actual work and to see how you would perform, but also kind of respond within the typical situations that we face in the everyday today. And indeed, yeah, the skills and qualities that you are able to display in the case interview are also generally the same that we look for within the work itself. So it's really just trying to simulate the real life environment. But then also for you as a candidate, it's a good way to try to understand whether you enjoy the type of work. So it's about being under pressure, performing in front of other people, coming up with a clear structure and presenting structured thinking, demonstrating business acumen, and being able to come up with kind of logical and sequential ideas rather quickly. So all of these things we do in the work, and then you can see if you enjoy that type of cognitive problem solving. And if you enjoy it, then there's a high likelihood that you'll enjoy the work itself. And if you don't enjoy it, if it feels boring or if you don't like the pressure that is involved there, then you might not like the work itself. So it's a win-win for both sides, I would definitely say. And then in terms of the key qualities being assessed, we're going to come back to these in terms of best practices as well, but just to get an over idea or an overview, as we also saw in the polls, we're looking for logical and structured thinking, analytical problem solving, business acumen. This is kind of tested and you can display throughout the case. And then communication skills. So typically in the work, we need both verbal and written. So here we're mainly testing the verbal part. The written will then check in your CV and cover letter. And then for this social level, when you come and present the case, and then also personality and cultural fit. So we can also, as Mikko said, test that or try to assess that in the beginning, but also somewhat through the case itself. Any questions on this part? Either it's crystal clear or then we have a very typical Finnish
Yeah.
audience. We should have come up with a prize that
the
most
exactly.
questions get some candy or something like that. Virtual candy this time. But we move on to typical problem types.
Hey, yeah, so MJ had a question.
What are the things to keep in mind during case interview? That's a good question and something that we'll touch on in the best practices and also in the summary. But good question indeed. Do you have any other comments?
No. We can answer that question just in a minute. So if you have patience to wait couple minutes, then we will answer your questions. But very good point. Any other questions so far? No, let's continue with the typical problems. So case types or problems types that you can get during the case interview cover like, well, this is now generalized under 6 themes, but those themes cover variety of different types of issues. And just to mention a couple, so the typical one would be some kind of like, you would probably get this in the early phase of the interview process, or even part of another case. So market sizing, very basic type of problem structure. So you would get a question where you're asked to size some market. For example, well, bus market, or like how many buses there are sold each year in Finland. That would be probably, for example, one market sizing type of problem. Then the second one, typical one, very typical, is growth strategy related problems. Growth strategy related problems. So you get asked to define how some company can pursue growth or seek what kind of opportunities there could be, how to materialize those in terms of revenue like growth, or then profitability growth. Typically there can be either organic or inorganic, so M&A driven growth strategies, or then some kind of combination of both, and that you are asked to evaluate the opportunities and give a recommendation which opportunities provide growth potential for the client. Then this kind of like a general perspective to start from the scratch and identify the opportunities, and then derive recommendation. Then more like specific one type of problem type could be market entry related problems. So you will get a problem that asks you to evaluate whether some client should enter, for example, a geographical market, for example, from Finland to Sweden, expand geographically, or then like product segment or product type wise. So whether the client should enter, for example, different new product category or different customer segment, and how that could be done. Those are very typical case problem times. Then the next one, typical one, also M&A related problem, where you are asked to evaluate whether some M&A activity makes sense or not for the client, or then the client like universe. Typically you will get this kind of like from a private equity investor perspective, where you are asked to evaluate whether private equity company should acquire some specific target company, or then from industrial company perspective, or so-called strategic buyer perspective, where you are asked to evaluate whether the client should for example acquire their competitor or some other company from a totally new market, for example. Then also pricing related problems are typical. So you are asked to evaluate or assess how the client could improve their like pricing, or then also like improve their competitiveness through pricing related moves, development. Should they transfer or update their pricing strategy to for so-called, for example, value-based pricing? What benefits it would give? What kind of implications there could be from that kind of move, and so on. Those are also quite typical. Not that typical probably as compared to for example market entry or growth strategy related questions, but occur quite often. And then the final very typical problem type bucket is operations related cases, which also covers this kind of like a cost strategy cases. So you could get a problem where you are asked to assess how to how to improve, for example, some specific operative like model phase related performance, or then cut costs. For example, improve the target client could have some kind of like a cost profitability issues, and you are asked to evaluate how to improve the cost structure so that the profitability gets better. Or then you can get this kind of like a process improvement. So how to for example improve supply chain type of issues. So this is pretty much the most typical ones. Of course, you can get like some specific type of questions, but this pretty much summarizes the most typical ones what you probably could get during the case interviews that you'll have. Peter, do you have anything to add on the case problem types?
No, I think that was a very good overview, and indeed, these are just some examples of the main ones. You can get all kinds of stuff in the case interview, but especially what we typically have are the first few there. But good question from Milia. Let me answer that in a few points. So the question was about whether students need to know certain things by heart, or whether they need to bring some external information that they found from somewhere. The general answer is that you don't need any kind of external information to solve the case. So the information you need will be presented in the case. Typically, the candidate will have to ask for certain information, and part of the assessment is, are they able to think about the right things to ask for? So that's one. Two, there is a certain sense or element of having some common sense or general business understanding that you can then apply to the case. So that is something that you kind of bring from the outside, but it's not something that you can directly prepare for the case interview. It's just something you build up over time. And definitely you don't need to bring any books or anything like that into the interview. However, in relation to the kind of problem types and how to solve them, there's a lot of information online that you can use to prepare and get some ideas for. But the idea of the case interview is to really test how the candidate is able to apply kind of a logical structure to that specific problem. So for example, the market sizing, there's a kind of general approach how to do it, but it'll be specific and unique to each case. So then what we're really testing for is how well you can apply it to that case. And we definitely don't recommend kind of trying to memorize a bunch of different frameworks that you find online or from school, because the idea is to come up with kind of your own framework to solving that specific problem.
Yeah, that's actually a very important point, because we know the like book frameworks also, and we know that if you come up with this kind of like a very generic from the book like framework that we know those, so it doesn't give you very good good impression of your performance if you just come up with the like pre-solved structures. So prepare like the old ones and try to elaborate on the framework around the framework, so that we actually get an understanding on your like business acumen and ability to actually structure the problems, that because that's something that we are actually doing on daily basis in our work. So we don't use this kind of like a pre-structured frameworks, that we need to all actually prepare the frameworks and tailor those for client issues and needs every time. So that's very important point.
Good question also from Subi. So we don't change the case to the candidate based on their attributes, or select the case based on their attributes. We have a number of cases that we use, and we generally use a variety of them for different candidates, but we don't like make it specific based on the candidates. It's the kind of same case for everyone in a sense.
Yeah, of course we have like different cases, but we don't select those based on the background. But of course, if it, for example, more finance related case, and you don't have very finance related background, then That's of course taken into account. If you have very good answers and performance, that's very impressive. But then if you have like finance related background, that's more and like a assumption or prerequisite that you understand the basic themes and all the details. So that's taken into account, but we don't tailor the cases based on background.
Good question also from Lynn, and apologies if I'm saying the last name and not the first name. We can't really give any percentages of how many applicants get through to the interview stage, and we can't say how hard or easy it is. Generally, I can comment that if you match the job description, if you have the right kind of background, the right kind of experiences, the right kind of skills we're looking for, then you're very likely to get into the interview stage as well. And the question
we do get a lot of applications that we can say.
Question, that's definitely true. Also from Wei, generally you don't need to have any pre-existing industry knowledge. So the cases typically are industry specific. You have to have a company within a specific industry, but you're not expected to know any in-depth or KPIs or anything like that about that industry. Of course, it helps if you have a general understanding, then you're able to get through the case probably better, but it's not a requirement in any way. But good questions. If there's nothing more, then we'll move on. So we're going to try to spend a bit more time on this, but also finish around 5 so we can go to the actual case practice. So looking at some best practices and what we're really kind of looking for in an ideal answer to a case interview, there's different dimensions that we look at here. So pose, structure, problem solving, quantitative skills, qualitative skills. These are roughly in line with what we talked about earlier. And I'll kind of go through these point by point because I think a lot of these are really, really useful and there's a lot of information here, and then I can elaborate on different points if there's any questions. If we start with pose, it's important to remember that what we're trying to simulate is the consultant being in front of a client. So what we're looking for is people who are able to demonstrate that either they currently possess or in the future can develop into a professional consultant who can work with high-level C-level executive customers. Starting with the first point, demonstrates a structured and logical approach to problem solving generally and does not panic. So we like to see people who are confident but not cocky and who are calm under pressure. And if you run into a problem, it's not a problem to ask for guidance or for help. Try to do it in a kind of smooth way, maybe. So don't just say I'm stuck, I need help, but try to kind of guide the interviewer as well towards what you're thinking. And then we like to see kind of generally the phrase used is we don't want to see kind of unstructured thoughts just coming out of your head, but we like to see that you've thought about an answer and then you deliver it in a structured and professional way. Then typically, if the second point, if you're not excited or not passionate about the client problem, then the client can see that as a problem. They generally, it's better to be excited about their problems, and it makes them more cooperative as well. And naturally, it's important to understand the exact question that you're being asked so that you answer that question and not some adjacent question. So you need to clarify if there's any confusion. And instead of reading back the exact same words you heard from the original prompt, it's good to paraphrase and explain how you understood it. And in this case, indeed, it's better to be kind of safe than risky. Also on the client side, we don't want to take any unnecessary risks. But it's although we're assessing the candidate, it's important to understand that you're kind of working together with the interviewer to solve the case, that you need to ask them for specific information to solve the case as well. And quickly, we don't know what you're thinking unless you communicate it to us. So you need to always kind of be telling us what you're thinking and how you would go about solving each question. In terms of structure, as we talked about before, structuring an approach to solve the problem is really critical, and it needs to be well, there on the third point, it's MISI, but so what we talk about is mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So your answer needs to answer the question fully and not leave anything out, but also not have any any direct overlaps within different elements of your answer. So ideally, it needs to be, we're talking about a case interview, so it's kind of a condensed version of a real project, so it can still be quite simple, but yet sophisticated, so it needs to answer the question fully. And indeed, a customized framework would be ideal. And then what's also important is that the reason we do the structure is so that then you're able to go through the case following that structure. And it's the same kind of thing we would use to design a project. So we would build the structure, and then throughout the project, we're going through on how to solve that project with the structure in place. And although we don't like overlaps, we do like to see if people are able to connect the different parts of the structure through logical connection points. In terms of problem solving, indeed, everything you need is in the case itself. But if you're able to bring in personal experience or knowledge where applicable, that adds kind of flavor and color to your answers, and that's definitely appreciated. And when you're given new information, what we really look for in this work is to understand the kind of underlying drivers or causes of certain situations or problems. That helps you to get at the key solutions to the client problem. And then it's also good to kind of synthesize what you've learned so far and be able to deliver kind of mini conclusions to the client. So simulating the project work, we can give kind of a day one answer, and then a week one answer, and a 1 month answer to the client in case they want those. So it's kind of the elevator pitch you would give to the CEO if you run into them during the project. Then in terms of if we're talking about kind of quantifying benefits to the customer, 80-20 rule is very applicable. So you want to try to find where 80% of the benefit is, and that you can address with 20% effort. So we don't need to address all the problems of the client. If there's a few that solves 80% of their problems, then we'll just focus on those. And then indeed, what else? It's important to proactively answer the kind of implications of the analysis, the so what question. So instead of just stating the answers, you got to kind of tie it back to the client's original objective, what they want to achieve. Thank you. In the quantitative skills, we're not testing for high-level mathematics. It's high school math that we're looking for. It's, especially percentages, multiplication, subtraction, some basic division, everything you can do with a pen and paper. And we do recommend pen and paper. So doing things in your head can be risky. So it's always better to be safe on paper. You're not allowed to use a calculator during the interview, and you also don't need one. Again, we're talking about kind of back of the envelope calculation. So we want to get to the ballpark, not necessarily the exact number. What's also critical here is, 1 second, sorry. Before going into calculations, we like to see that you're able to figure out the logic and all the steps you need to come to the answer before going into it. That way, if we see that there's something missing or a problem somewhere, then we can address that before going into calculation and getting stuck. Yeah, applying judgment and common sense are good as well, and rounding up and using estimates where appropriate are also advisable. Sanity checks are really important and something that we'd like you to answer independently. So if the company's revenue is 100 million and you've identified growth opportunities of 500 million, then maybe it's good to sanity check before you recommend all those ideas to the client. It might not be too feasible. In terms of qualitative skills, indeed, you might be asked for a question. So how can this company grow? What are the different ideas that you could have for that? Then we like to see a structure there, but also the ability to generate a lot of different ideas, and also using the data that you've received earlier in the case, but then also focusing on the main ideas that, again, would drive the kind of 80% of the benefits. Overall, coming to a conclusion, I know there's a lot of points here. So what we're looking for is a good performance throughout the case, and not kind of somebody getting through it with luck. And then, although we're kind of typically staying at a high level, we also like to get down to the details where necessary. and then be able to come back up to the kind of high level strategy side for the conclusion. Sorry, any questions on this part? I know there's a lot to take in. MJ is asking whether we should speak aloud. Yes, typically you can take silences. So for example, in the beginning, when you want to structure your approach, you can take 2 minutes to think about the structure yourself, and then you present it to the interviewer. But yes, if you don't speak and let us know what you're thinking, then it's hard to assess what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question and very good point to raise. So communication cannot be emphasized too much. So that's very important part of the whole case interview. So as Petter said, that we need to understand, get an understanding on your skills and the logic behind your thoughts. So that's the only way how we can get that understanding is by you communicate clearly and comprehensively so that we can actually get inside your mind and understand how you are approaching the problem and what's the logic behind the calculations and so on. That's a very important question.
So asking about rounding up, it's hard to give a definitive answer as to where exactly you should be doing this or should not be. Kind of it's case dependent. So typically we want accuracy where possible, but if getting to the very kind of decimal level accuracy would take a very long time, then it can be advisable to round up. So say if it's 49.5 million euros in revenue, and then you have 5 different products that it's coming from, then it might make it easier to round that up to 50, and then you have 10 million per product instead of it being 9.9 million per product. It's a good question again about the speed of solving the case problem. Again, hard to answer definitively. You do need to progress with a certain pace. There's no rush in a sense, but you do need to get through it in a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything to add? Any additional questions about the structure of the case interviews, the performance dimensions, or anything other before we go to the actual practice case?
Indeed, it's 5:02, so we're just about on time. So more or less in time, we're going to switch back to the original presentation. Just 1 second for a summary and key takeaways. First, we can ask, is there any questions at this stage that we haven't answered? There was a question earlier on how do we recommend preparing for the case interviews beforehand, or do we give any insights beforehand? I would say that this session is definitely the insight beforehand that we can give, and you're getting very direct tips on what we look for. But if there's no other questions, then we'll kind of present a summary of the key takeaways from this session. If we start with the first one, preparation is key, as to most things in life. So here,
Peter, you just share the screen you're presenting.
Thank you. That's a good point. So moving on to the key takeaways, since there weren't any questions. So preparation is key. The other points we'd like to highlight are showing your best self, not forgetting the personal parts, and then we'll talk about relaxing. So starting with preparation though, and so in consulting, we're typically using general business acumen, but as we've seen in that case, it's quite specific still, the skill set that we need for this work. And so preparing and practicing, there's 3 elements to it. First is kind of knowing what you're going into, which this session definitely helps a lot with. You can also speak with friends in consulting. You can read, there's a lot of information online that you can find that helps as well. And yeah, as mentioned, these types of events are for sure useful. But then very, very critical is going through that case that we just did, but doing it for real with a friend or with another unfriend from online. So there's lots of different platforms where you can practice these things, and doing it under pressure, performing in front of somebody brings a whole different level of intensity to the case, which you will then experience in the interview as well. So I would definitely recommend doing that. And then practicing the mental and paper math. It's not something that we typically do in our daily lives because of calculators, but it's something that we test in the interview, and something that we do live in front of clients as well. So that's really the key thing, I would say. Second, we've kind of mentioned this already, so we can only assess what we see and hear. So you really need to kind of say even sometimes the obvious things so that we know what you're thinking. And then the third point, we really want to understand your motivations for joining our team. So you need to be able to articulate these well. And typically this involves researching the kind of consulting sector generally, and KPMG, and then also specifically if you're coming for our team, then the strategy team. And although it's can be a pressured situation, we do try to remind you to try and relax. So we want you to succeed, and the interviewer is there to help you. So if you do get stuck or anything, then just do bring that up. Although we do expect you to be driving the case more. Any other comments, Mikko, to add?
No, nothing to add. Just well, maybe preparation cannot be emphasized too much. So that's important. Too often we see very promising candidates who are not prepared enough, and then they are not able to get the best out of themselves, and then we are not fully confident to hire them, or then to get to the next round, interview round. So preparation is very important. But then don't focus only on case part of the interview. Also focus on the personal fit part. So trying to do your homework on the company that you are applying for, and trying to get really study whether it's something that you see good reasons to apply, and what are those reasons, and try to communicate those during the interview.
Then with your own open-ended questions, we'd like to get a word cloud as to how you felt the training was. So if you found it useful, or if you found it unuseful, any ideas to improve it, then we'd love to hear your feedback as to how you felt the training was. Question for Jessica regarding the online places for consulting case studies, if you mean for practicing them with people. I'm sure there's more than one. There's one that I used. It's called, I will quickly check what it's called, and I will get back to you.
But at least if you check on YouTube, you can find like just hours of different this kind of like a mock interview type of example cases, which are very useful, and I recommend it to check. But then don't forget the actual live case interview preparation. So as Peter mentioned, that it really makes sense to try to do it with your friend, to try to actually simulate the live case interview yourself.
Yeah, very good addition. So for example, the one I used is called Prep Lounge. So that's preplounge.com. I can put it in the chat. I think you might have to pay like 20 euros for a 1-year subscription or something like that. But I found it useful because there you can, doing it with friends is a lot of fun, but there you can do it with other people from around the world. You can set up times that are convenient for you and practice cases. The idea is you give one case, you also get the experience of giving cases, and then the other person gives you a case as well. So that's definitely useful. Thank you very much for the feedback. That is much appreciated. And then we will switch over to our upcoming recruiting processes, please do submit more answers in the Mentimeter if you come up with more ideas. Let me just switch screens here. Are you seeing the correct slide? So upcoming recruiting processes. Mikko, do you see it?
Yeah. Yes. So, as Peter mentioned, we have upcoming recruiting processes. First one, full-time permanent position, so entry level in our team, GST associate position. That's ongoing process. You can find it on LinkedIn or KPMG's website, or you can contact myself directly and send you applications. We will give you the our contact details in the end of this session. As said, we welcome applications on an ongoing basis, so please apply if you're interested. If you are close to graduation or already graduated, then the intern path. Typically we have two intern recruiting rounds throughout the year. So one in spring, one in autumn, and the next one will be in April. We have not decided the exact date yet, but we will inform about that one through all the main portals. So probably Aalto, like this student union portals, and then probably Aalto career website, and then LinkedIn and KPMG's all different channels. And then our HR department wanted to highlight that we have also this IT intern application recruiting process starting up. So if you are interested about IT consulting or IT related positions, then please contact us or then KPMG's HR directly, and we will connect you to the right persons. We unfortunately don't have any direct contacts there that we can give you, but that's something to keep in mind if you are interested in IT internship.
And I think that was opening on Friday.
Yeah.
A question from Lynn: GSG internships are open to which education level? So for the internship, I think, if I remember off the top of my head, so we look across like degree disciplines first of all, but we do expect university level kind of attendance. I think it's from like the second year of studies onwards that you can apply for the internship. Maybe not first year, but kind of end of second year you can be applying, and then we've had some people who are kind of in their third year who are attending their internship as in our team.
About international students at KPMG, yeah, well, of course we are open for applicants all over the world. So basically we don't restrict anyone to apply to us, and we review all those like all the candidates are on the same page when we are reviewing the applications. So if you are interested, then of course please apply.
Good questions. Thank you. We're now at the end of our kind of official session, but we're gonna hang around if anybody has any more questions at this stage. Any final comments, Milja, from your side?
Just wanted to say thank you. This was very, very insightful, and I really enjoyed your training. So I'm sure this was very helpful for the students. Also, I think you have a Tech Guru program going on, and that will be on our next career mail. So students, check that out as well if you're interested in KPMG.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the feedback.
One question there, MJ was asking about the grades you need to be. Well, we don't have any certain limit or that you need to have like 4.x to get accepted. We assess the overall like CV and background. We don't only look at grades. Grades are one important part of the overall impression, but not everything. So if you don't have like GPA of 5, it doesn't matter if you have like all the other boxes ticked, so to say. So basically, that's like overall view that we are looking for.
Yeah,
Peter, do you have anything? Yeah.
We do encourage you to apply, but then also you can check the job description. So generally for strategy consulting, we do look for kind of academic excellence. So we do look for good grades as a foundation for then later success in the work, but also as an indication of kind of drive and result orientedness. So, but as Mikko said, it's only one part of the puzzle. Good question, MJ. Any other questions at this stage? Otherwise, we can. Samuli, please go ahead. Now we can hit the most important slide of the presentation, internship related questions, and hopefully we will see many of you applying later for the either ongoing associate level role that we have open at the moment, or during April when we're opening the next internship recruiting for 2023. And then we hope to see many of you passing the kind of first cutoff, and then we'll be seeing you in the interviews. So Mikko and myself, we typically do the first round interviews for both processes. So then you'll be seeing more of us later on. We hope that's not too daunting at this stage.
Yeah. All right.
Jessica, do you still have a question, or is your hand raised from the previous one?
Sorry, it was a previous. I'll lower it.
No worries. We have one more from Trang. Maybe that's the last question we'll take, and then we'll close.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick question. Can I reach out on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or something to inquire?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. That's just a quick question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending from my side, and hope to see many of you applying in the future. Any other closing words, Mikko?
No, this was very, very interesting and nice way to get in touch with students, and as said, we want to all of you to apply to our either intern positions or then full-time position later on, and hopefully we'll see you at our office sometime. All right.
Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.